Hi, when the Renaissance painter Raphael painted the school of Athens, he had Plato and Aristotle in the middle. And they both do something very contrasting. Plato is pointing upwards and Aristotle is pointing downwards. What's going on here? The question that Raphael in some ways brings here is the question of how do we have hope? Do we have hope by looking up at things above, or do we have hope by looking down on things of nature? So to understand why this question was important to people in the Greek times, it is important to understand the social context in which this question came about. You see, in the Greek world, they see the world as changing all the time. And even we see change around us all the time. Even our phones have changed the world in a very fundamental way. Is change good? Is change bad? How do we engage with change? How do we have hope? Can change make things chaotic? These were some questions that were there. And there was two philosophical schools of thought engaging the question of change in the Greek world. One is everything is change all the time. That's led by Heraclitus, who said you cannot step into the same river twice, because you step into the river once, step out and step back in, and the river has moved on. And then you have Parmenides, who said no, change is just an illusion. Behind the scenes, everything is the same. For the Greeks, they couldn't figure out which way to go. And even their gods were gods of change, who kept changing all the time. And so the question became, how do we find hope to keep moving forward in the midst of change? And this is where the Greek mathematicians came up with a solution. What is something that will never change? They said, how about this? The idea that a triangle has 180 degrees when you count all the angles will never change. In a flat surface, the sum of the angles in a triangle will always be 180 degrees. That never changes. They said, okay, this gives us a sense of stability in the midst of all this change. So Pythagoras is one of those mathematicians. In fact, Raphael paints Pythagoras in the corner of his painting as he's doing his mathematical work. And other people are looking around to see, hey, what's he doing here? Pythagoras looked to math to say that, hey, there are certain things that never changes, but then he went a step further. If you take a string and then divide it by certain ratios and arrange it together and pluck those strings, it creates beautiful melody. It creates harmony. When you go with these certain specific mathematical ratios, it creates beauty and harmony. You see, these ratios is where the word rational comes from. So Pythagoras said, even though we see all this change, there has to be something behind all this change that creates order and structure and harmony that ultimately creates beauty. The Greek philosophers called this the world of forms, or the ideal world. In fact, Plato talks a lot about this, and that's why we call this world of ideas the Platonic world. The idea was that in the perfect world, there is all these mathematical laws and physical laws, and the physical world is a replica of this perfect world. There's the idea of a cat, and then you have a whole bunch of imperfect cats in the physical world that are trying to replicate this ideal world. And that's why Plato is pointing upwards in the painting of Raphael. So the question is, where is this ideal located? This is where in the Greek world they called it logos, or creative reason. You have the ideal world and then you have the physical world, and logos was creative reason that took the ideas from the ideal world and brought it into the physical world. This is something that John uses. John's gospel, he says, in the beginning was the word logos, and the word logos was with God, and the word logos was God. In the Greek world, logos, or creative reason, is like the software that runs the world. And what John is saying here is, hey, this logos, or creative reason, took human form and came to us as Jesus. The second person of Trinity comes to us in the world. So he's using the Greek ideal to talk to the people, to help us to understand who God is. Pope Benedict says, to live a faith that comes from logos, this creative reason, is to be open to all that is truly rational, right? This is important, because to have faith in logos, or creative reason, is not to say, I don't believe in science, right? It is to believe in all that is truly rational. It is to believe in beauty and goodness, and truth that comes from a creative reason. And John goes on to say, he was with God at the beginning, and through him all things were made that were made. Without him nothing was made that has ever been made. So this is the Son being with the Father and Trinity creating the world together when they said, let us make man in our own image, in our own likeness. You see, God creates the world and creates human beings in that world with that sense of reason that God himself has. Dr. Francis Collins, he was the one that headed the Human Genome Project that decoded the human DNA. He's a scientist who says, belief in a rational and good creator God helps us to use reason to explore the world around us. You see, for us to use our reason to explore the world, what we are saying is the world is rational. So we can explore the world, so we can use our reason to try to understand the world. If the world is irrational, everything is changing all the time and everything is chaotic, then what's the point of trying to understand anything, right? That would lead us to a place of despair. So what gives us hope to keep putting our steps forward, to keep exploring the world using our reason as scientists, is our belief that the world is, first of all, a place that is rational, and God is a good creator who gave to us, in making us as people with the image of God, the reason to help us to understand and explore the world around us. In fact, Proverbs 25:2 says, it is the glory of God to conceal a thing, but the honor of kings is to explore and search out a matter, right? So if you look at Isaac Newton or Johannes Kepler, they both were Christians who believed that because God is rational and he has made us in his image as rational beings, we can use our reason to understand the world. 100 years ago, we didn't know anything about the DNA. How DNA worked was something that was concealed to us. But by using human reason, we came to a place where Francis Collins was able to lead the effort to decode the human DNA as a scientist. And that's what Proverbs 25 talks about. The honor of kings is to search out a matter. When he's saying kings, it's not just kings as in people with crowns, kings as in people who are made in God's image. We all are divine in the sense that we all are made in God's image. So that is why to have faith is not to say, oh, I don't believe in science. To have faith is the only thing that helps us to use our reason to understand the world, which is what it means to be a scientist. To live a life of faith that comes from logos and creative reason is to be joyously open to all that is good and beautiful and true. When we say change and chaos, that may fill us with a sense of despair. We may wonder, oh, why is everything changing? Why even try if everything is going to keep on changing? But when we have faith in God, in logos as the creative reason, we don't have to be people that give in to despair or to fate when we see all this change around us. We can know well that because we are made in the image of a God who is rational and good, we can use our reason to try to understand the world and keep putting one step forward, and do that joyously and with hope. So that's why when we are Christians, we don't have to be people that feel like we need to choose between faith and science. We don't have to be people like Plato and Aristotle saying, okay, I'm going to be pointing upward and just think about the big world out there, or be like Aristotle saying, I just care about nature and the world over here. To have faith in this creative logos, as John talks about, is to have faith in someone who created the world in a rational way and was good, that he gave us reason to understand the world. So when we see change, we don't have to give in to despair or be afraid of chaos. Rather, we can be people that use our reason to try to understand this good world that God has created, to look at all that is good and beautiful and true in this world with hope, without giving in to despair that comes from the chaos and the change that we see around us. So that is the good news for today. So until I see you in another video, bye for now.